I am D. Kelly Ogden. I lived and worked a span of about 14 years in the Holy Land. 3 of our 4 children were born there, and 3 of the 4 I baptized in the Jordan River. That's our baptismal font in that land when they turned 8. I have climbed Mount Sinai 18 times, and I've walked the full length and breadth of that land. And I know that the land makes the scriptures come alive. This is a good time to go to the Holy Land and to go with a group of Latter-day Saints that understand better than any group the meaning of scriptures with the help of modern scripture. Goethe, old German writer, said, "Wer den Dichter will verstehen, muss in Dichters Lande gehen," which means, roughly translated, anyone who wants to understand a poet must go to the poet's homeland. If you want to understand Wordsworth, go to where Wordsworth wrote. If you want to understand Isaiah, who is a poet par excellence, then go to where Isaiah wrote. Nephi loved Isaiah, and he understood him. While he's writing in 2 Nephi 25 about reasons or how to understand Isaiah, he said, "I myself have dwelled at Jerusalem, wherefore I know concerning the regions round about." He knew the lay of the land, the topography, and the imagery that Isaiah used so he could understand it better. And all the prophets and the apostles and the master teacher himself used much imagery from that land. Examples. Psalm 23 would be the most famous, one of the most famous passages in all the Bible. I have sung those words with a great choir in the Salt Lake Tabernacle, in nationwide broadcast, full orchestration, but I've never understood the words as well as being on site in the shepherd's fields around Bethlehem. "The Lord is my shepherd," he wrote. "He leadeth me beside still waters." Water is life in that part of the world, far more important than oil or any other commodity. And he wrote, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." When the sun sets in the west and casts long shadows over the little valleys, the wadis they call them in that part of the world, were there any evils that David had to face? Yes, he had to deal with taking on a bear and a lion. So there were dangers, evils, but thy rod and thy staff will protect me and comfort me. Beautiful imagery. Another, the Lord mentioned in the Doctrine and Covenants, as the dews of Carmel, so he would pour out knowledge on the heads of the saints in the last days. Well, what does the dews of Carmel mean? I learned early in my studies of that land that Mount Carmel, a range in the northwest part of the country, has 250 dew nights a year. Understandably, the Lord would use an image like that, but Joseph Smith didn't know that. But that's not Joseph Smith writing. That's the Lord dropping an image from his land into modern scripture even. Other examples of the land making the scriptures come alive. When Jesus was baptized, he's going to condescend to live among mortals. And to start his ministry, he's going to be baptized. He didn't have any sin, but he's going to keep all of the commandments he's given for us to live. So he goes to the lowest place on earth where you could be baptized in fresh water, the Jordan River, just before it enters the Dead Sea. And he goes to be baptized of John to the lowest point on earth and goes even below that in the water. Interesting imagery. When Jesus is journeying from Jerusalem to Galilee, he travels through Samaria, stops to have a conversation with a woman at a well, Jacob's well. That's where he pronounced the first witness that we have on record that he was the Messiah, to a woman of Samaria. What did he talk about with her? Living water. Understandably, because he's at a well, he talks about living water, just like later in Capernaum, where they found more mills for grinding, making bread. Apparently they manufactured them there. So what does he talk about in the synagogue at Capernaum? The bread of life. And at Caesarea Philippi, when he took his disciples on a 35-mile hike north of the Sea of Galilee to Caesarea Philippi, he asked, "Whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" Well, they gave him some possibilities. Peter stood right up boldly and said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus said, "Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father who is in heaven." He had received revelation. That's the key, the rock of revelation. Or Jesus may have gestured to himself, "Upon this rock I will build my church," because he is the rock of our salvation, through whom all revelation comes. So living water at a well, and bread of life where mills are made for making bread, and rock at the foot of the most massive rock formation in that part of the world, right on the border of 3 countries, Mount Hermon, over 9,000 feet up. So he talks about rock. Oh, such fascinating imagery that comes by being on site and studying the scriptures right there. One last example. When Jesus started teaching his one of the most famous parables, the Good Samaritan, starts out, "A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves." Well, what word really comes alive in that sentence? The adverb, down. Because Jerusalem sits right at the top of the hills, and Jericho is the lowest city on the globe, over 800 feet below sea level. So at just 17 miles, it's really a journey down. Just like in the Book of Mormon, those first few chapters, Lehi's colony is led out through the wilderness, down to the Rift Valley and all the way to the Red Sea, and then his sons are sent back up to Jerusalem to get the plates, and then back down to the tent of their father, and then back up to Jerusalem to get the girls to marry, and then back down to the tent of their father. All that up and down is very real. The Book of Mormon also knows what it's talking about. So the land really does make the scriptures come alive. Nobody can go to that land and not have a different view of the scriptures and understanding of the scriptures all the rest of their scriptural study life. So we invite you, as Jesus said, come and see.